Another day, another new podcast. Hello and welcome to the first instalment of The Entertainment Room, a podcast looking at all forms of entertainment, be it music, film, video games and TV, and just rounding up some of the things we've seen in the entertainment industry this week. I'm Jacob Ottaway, and joining me is Jess Clayton-Berry, the pioneer of this podcast. Hello, Jess.
Afternoon, everyone.
And I believe you've got some breaking news for us, which has come in on this Wednesday lunchtime.
Yeah, after months of speculation, since November, I gather, Activision Blizzard have finally announced that 8% of its workforce is actually at risk of losing their jobs. Over 700, I see.
And 700 jobs in the video game industry, obviously we know we have these big companies like Activision, but how much of a strain does that put on, well, first of all, the employees there, and secondarily, these people who look, and make the indie games as well, does that sort of put a burden on them and also put sort of a concern on them as well, knowing that the video game industry is having to cut X amount of jobs?
Well, it's certainly a problem for big companies such as Activision Blizzard, who are the most well known for doing the Call of Duty franchise. They were working on other projects other than Call of Duty, like little smaller projects, but they've now had to stop prioritising that to work on their big projects such as Call of Duty. And so it's not just a problem for indie game companies who I reckon aren't really affected as much by these kind of things as big companies are, because big companies such as EA, Activision, Ubisoft are more likely to be pumping out projects such as Call of Duty to make money, whereas indie game companies can take those risks to make smaller games.
Now, speaking of Call of Duty, I believe there's a new Call of Duty in line to be released this year. And the thing which has been impressing quite a few players has been that there is supposedly going to be a single-player mode. Now, I know that we have our differences in playing video games. I know you love a good single-player campaign, whereas I'm on the bandwagon of these new Battle Royale games. Do you think it's a victory that Call of Duty have gone towards the single-player mode, in comparison to where they could have gone to a full Battle Royale thing, or do you think maybe they've missed a trick here?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a victory, because Call of Duty wasn't exactly the game spearheading the Save Player One campaign in the first place, but it is reassuring to know that despite their multiplayer being so successful, they've now backtracked on that and decided that actually maybe they do need a single player campaign, because even those who play multiplayers are missing it. The Call of Duty it's not just great for its multiplayer, but in the past it has had excellent storylines. I've been waiting for years for it to go back to its roots. Like the first Black Ops game had an excellent storyline, amazing twist at the end, great actors, and I just hope this means they're going back to those days.
And do you think this gives gamers sort of more value for money? I mean, you look at games, like you say, EA, they make FIFA. They focus a lot on their online things, but their offline things, such as the career mode, have barely changed for the best part of 5 years. So do you feel that a good single-player mode adds more value to money for this Call of Duty game when you consider that actually some people spend upwards of £80 for the higher editions of it?
Well, EA have been throwing around this phrase for years about saying that the future of gaming is games as a service and not just like a product that you buy on the day. And I actually think it's the success of single-player games that have been using their campaigns to gain money in the first place, such as Red Dead Redemption 2, that a lot of big companies are now backtracking on that idea that actually, people do want a quality storyline, and it's not just the multiplayer that people are focusing on. Red Dead Redemption 2 is I believe it's the second biggest selling game ever to call it Grand Theft Auto 5, and it doesn't even have a proper multiplayer yet. It's still in beta mode.
But obviously bear in mind as well, when Grand Theft Auto 5's multiplayer mode came out, there was a spike once again in the amount of players buying this game. Do you feel that Red Dead will need that spike as well?
Well, the thing is, Grand Theft Auto 5 was the largest selling game the first 3 days of release. I think there wasn't online at the time, but
Not.
Oh, was there not an online at all? But that just goes to show that Grand Theft Auto didn't actually need the online for the sales. The sales were improved once the online was released, but obviously that was like an inclusion of more gameplay.
That's fair enough. Now, if you're new to the podcast, which you will be, me and Jess have different areas of knowledge. I'm more of a music nerd, and Jess herself is more of a film buff, an absolutely incredible film buff, whose knowledge is beyond the powers of any fathomable idea. So, Jess, what have you got in the film world for us this week?
Well, this week in film news, hold on, let me just look at my notes.
Let's have a look at your notes.
Let's have a look at my notes. This year in film news, I believe this is something that will apply to you as well because of your interest in music. But yesterday, the Yesterday trailer was released.
Yesterday, a new film by Danny Boyle, many successful films, 127 Hours, and even more successful was Slumdog Millionaire. Now, if you haven't seen this trailer yet, go and watch it. You're bound to find it on social medias of some sort. Essentially, it's about a gentleman who is in an accident and is concussed, and he wakes up from his coma, and they give him a guitar, and he plays a Beatles song. In this reality he's woken up into, no one's ever heard of the Beatles. No one knows who the Beatles are. They think that this gentleman has written all these songs, and he's the best singer-songwriter of all time. And it's really weird in a way, because this film has got big stars in it, including one certain ginger man. Can you guess who it may be?
Is it Ed Sheeran by any chance?
It is absolutely Ed Sheeran. And I just find it quite amazing that this is another film going upon the musical success of a British band. We've had the Queen film, the Sir Elton John film, Rocket Man is coming out this year. I can't wait for that.
I think it's not just musical films that's coming up recently, it's musicals in general. For years, musicals were losing their popularity. I don't know whether you noticed, but barely any of them were being released. It's one of those film genres, along with westerns, that kind of blinked out of existence for a while. And I think this recent succession of musician films is actually as a result of La La Land's success. Which was one of the first successful musicals released in a very long time. And then, of course, after that, we had The Greatest Showman. Now we've got A Star Is Born. We've got Queen. We've got Rocket Man coming out. I think, I'm not sure, I wouldn't exactly call it a phase. I'd call it a reintroduction of the musical and music genre.
And also, in a way, it's a sort of revival of feel-good cinema as well, you know, which all the family, okay, maybe not A Star Is Born, but all the family can go and see. And I mean, I've noticed as well, actually, you look on social media, you look at upcoming events in and around your area, outdoor cinemas as well. This is another thing as well. So it's almost like a reintroduction of the feel-good cinema for all the family, which at this time is quite important, would you say?
Yeah, well, these days, going to the cinema as a family and as a social event is becoming more popular. For a while, cinema started going out of fashion because of piracy, but I think soon people just realised that actually piracy isn't worth all the hassle. The picture was never that good. I think people kind of jumped on the bandwagon for a while because it was free, but then soon realised that actually you get what you pay for at the cinema and it is worth it.
That's because I remember, you know, when I was growing up, my mate's dad would always have DVDs. Oh, hi, Jacob, do you want this film? Oh, thank you. But there we go. Now, actually, another thing which may be not threatening as such, but competing with cinema's perch is Netflix. And there's a film on Netflix which has been doing the rounds in the award ceremonies recently. Tell us more about that.
This is Roma. I am absolutely thrilled that Roma got the recognition it deserves. Not only is it a great film, but also Netflix has had a lot of hassle with the higher ups in the film world. I don't know whether you've heard this, but at Cannes Festival, when it was showing Okja, when the Netflix logo first appeared, it got booed from the crowd, and people were like shouting at the screen. And it was a right mess. But after the film actually ended, because it's a quite good film, and it reflects kind of what's going on in the meat industry at the moment. After it finished, it got standing ovation. So I'm actually absolutely thrilled that Netflix is finally being seen as producing quality films, and is not just seen as like a trend for kids to just get a load of blockbusters in.
Let me just put this into perspective for you as to how big Roma's uprising has been. At the BAFTAs this weekend just gone, it won Best Film. It was competing against absolutely monumental films which did very well in the box office. It won against Black Klansman, against The Favourite, against Green Book, against A Star Is Born. Do you reckon this could be a trend set? Do you reckon actually Netflix and other streaming services like Amazon Prime as well could soon be the high flyers at these award ceremonies?
One of the biggest things Netflix is good for is indie films. In the past, indie films and indie production companies have struggled because they couldn't afford the distribution costs for having a cinema screening. So often, really good films such as Ex Machina and 12 Years a Slave had a very limited screen release. And I think Netflix is absolutely brilliant for the fact that indie production companies can finally get the attention they deserve without needing those high distribution costs. I believe it doesn't cost, it barely costs anything to distribute a film through Netflix.
Now, the other thing as well, which I'll point out, also Roma won Best Director, Alfonso Cuarón, one of my favourite Mexican film directors, as well as producing some Hollywood films such as Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban and Gravity as well. He produced Y Tu Mama Tambien in 2001, which is, funny enough, my favourite Mexican film. Do you want to know what Y Tu Mama Tambien means?
What does it mean?
It means "and your mother too," as an insult. So actually, to come from Mexican cinema and then to make Hollywood blockbusters and then to make a Netflix blockbuster, that's quite an interesting career path, isn't it?
It's not just that. It's one of the best things about Roma's success is not only is it a Netflix film, and Netflix has been underappreciated in the past, but also it's a foreign-speaking film, so it's subtitles. They rarely ever get... Not only do they rarely get ever recognised by a wider audience, but a lot of the time they're not nominated for Best Picture, and on top of that, it's in black and white.
I will just point out as well that the film Roma won Best Cinematography as well, and was nominated for Best Editing as well, but unfortunately didn't win that. From the BAFTAs, what caught your eye?
Well, I was a little bit disappointed that Christian Bale got robbed of that BAFTA for Best Actor.
Robbed?
Yeah. I know a lot of people are on board for Rami Malek, but Ben Affleck, Christian Bale put on a lot of weight for Vice, and it's obviously not just a career choice, but also that's a lifestyle choice. Like, he would have had to been carrying around that weight for ages, and the amount of times he's done this method acting, it's also it must have an impact on his long-term health as well. And also, I completely adore Christian Bale as an actor, like, despite popular opinion.
Now, you see, obviously we say Christian Bale, and I completely agree, is one of the best, if not the best, method actors of all time. But do you think credit has to be given to Rami Malek as well, in the fact that in his own way, he sort of became a method actor? You know, he was living the life of Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, some kind of credit can be given to that, but I'd say that putting on weight for a role and risking your long-term health would trump putting on some false teeth any day. But I am glad that the Oscars the Oscars and the BAFTAs appreciates these more subtle acting choices, because actually taking on the role of a real person can be quite hard. But of course, Christian Bale also did that, and I have noticed that the Oscars seem to appreciate when someone takes on the role of a real person. It can be quite difficult.
I will just quickly run through some of the big results in the BAFTAs. So obviously Roma, Best Film. Olivia Colman, The Favourite, was the winner of Best Actress. Best Actor, Rami Malek. Best Director, Alfonso Cuarón in Roma. Outstanding British Film, The Favourite. Rising Star, which is voted for by the public. Now, we talked about this on the night of the BAFTAs. I was all in it for Letitia Wright to win. You were more supportive of Lakeith Stanfield. Just tell us about his role.
I was maybe being biased because I'm not such a fan of Black Panther, but Lakeith Stanfield was in a film called Sorry to Bother You, and I thoroughly enjoyed that film, and I really appreciated his work in it, because he was quite a good actor. He's probably one of my favourite parts of the film. His facial expressions were brilliant. And I kind of just wanted him to win, because I felt like Sorry to Bother You had been underappreciated at the award ceremonies.
Now, going on to Best Original Music, I should have bet my house and my university degree and my student loan and my job on who won this. Do you want to guess who won Best Original Music for films in 2018?
I'm going to guess it was A Star Is Born.
Well done, well done.
Rightly so, but my problem with the BAFTAs is how I kind of disagree with the fact that they merge film scores and film music together, because they're two completely entirely different things. Like, it feels weird that the BAFTAs would put Hans Zimmer in the same category as Lady Gaga. But yeah, I feel like this year Shallow rightly won Best Music. Well, not Shallow, but A Star Is Born.
Now, funnily enough, Shallow was performed on that night, but not at the BAFTAs. It was performed at the Grammys with Lady Gaga, not Bradley Cooper, Mark Ronson this time, in a more rocked-up version. Quite nice, actually. But I will move on to the Grammys quickly. Now, I'm as British as a full English breakfast, so unfortunately my American knowledge isn't the best in the world in terms of music and things like that. But just some of the big results. Dua Lipa, Best New Artist. I can't disagree with that. I think Dua Lipa's actually quite good. Best Rap Song, God's Plan, Drake. No surprises there. Drake, absolutely massive. Record of the Year, the big one. This is America, Childish Gambino. And I think that's quite suitable, actually. I mean, the political message it gives in a time, obviously, where ethnic minorities are being almost persecuted in the United States. The sort of ethical message that the Grammys portrays is quite important, isn't it, Jess?
Yeah, I can't really say anything, so I'm not that big a fan of music like that. I'm more of a fan of old music, like 70s. But
do you think that award ceremonies should pass on the sort of ethical messages, to be right-thinking, right-minded, and not be a racist bigot?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then just looking obviously at the other awards, obviously the Grammys, are quite good for their full sort of range of, genres, looking at the best jazz awards, the best reggae. Shaggy won an award. Sting and Shaggy won the best reggae album. And there's a lot more there. You can get the full list of Grammy Award winners online. Where should we go next?
And on top of that, I believe Muse actually, well, they've teased it in the past, but they've actually announced their World Tour Simulation Theory.
I'll tell you what, Muse have announced their full tour for Simulation Theory. Now, the dates have gone on my computer, but they're going into the United States in February, coming across to the Europe in March and April, and obviously working their way through, in towards the end of May, going throughout Europe as well. Huge tour. And I know that Muse, they're labelling it, and Q Magazine have labelled it as the greatest show on earth. Now, the tour for their last album, Drones.
I absolutely loved it. I went to go and see them in Birmingham. I think it wasn't last year, it was the year before that. And honestly, both the live music and the visuals were stunning. The tickets are a little bit pricey, but I feel like after going there, it was completely worth it. It's not just like a music show, it's the visuals are completely stunning. They do put on a great show, although Simulation Theory wasn't my favourite album by Muse, so I don't deny that. They would definitely be great seeing live.
Now, I'll tell you what, speaking of seeing them live, they are playing at the Rock Werchter Festival in Belgium in June, and I think this festival has got the best lineup in the world. The best that I've ever seen.
I'm so disappointed. I wish I was German right now.
Now, you see, this is the thing. I do wonder whether Brexit will affect the ability of people in the UK to go to these festivals, but I'm not going into that. It's not my place to do so. But let me just take you through some of the huge names on this festival list. And I'm going to do it in the style of Miami in Bohemian Rhapsody, where he reads to people going at Live Aid. Pink, Bastille, Elbow. That's the Thursday lineup. A little bit, quieter, but that's all right. Friday gets bigger. Tool, The Cure, Bring Me the Horizon, The 1975, Weezer. The lineup is so big that Nothing But Thieves on that day are on a support stage. And Nothing But Thieves have been flying through the British, album industry. 2 great albums, a great EP, and the lineup is so good they can only get on a support stage on that day. Saturday gets even better. Mumford & Sons, Macklemore, Clean Bandit, Two Door Cinema Club, Florence and the Machine, who has just released a new song, by the way, called Moderation. What do you think of it?
I absolutely loved it. We went to go and see when was it?
We went to see her in November at the O2 Arena.
Yeah, November. It was an excellent concert. I love Florence and the Machine, but I was just not expecting it to be that good. And she puts on a great show.
Just to sum up how good that show was from Florence and the Machine, I went to over a dozen gigs last year. I went to see people such as Nothing But Thieves, obviously. I went to Queens of the Stone Age and Friends in Finsbury Park, which was an absolutely mental day. I was sunburnt, covered in sweat, bruised. I saw Iggy Pop. I saw Queens of the Stone Age. It was crazy. And yet the Florence and the Machine gig was just almost like a spiritual experience.
Yeah, she. It feels very personal at times. Like I know I've been to many bands in the past and many artists, but I feel like the way she interacts with the crowd is amazing.
It's so personal. It's like the fact that, when she's talking to the audience, she comes across, as human. There is anxiety to be standing in front of 20,000 people, and then suddenly she performs, and it's like, whoa.
And out of all the bands I go to see, I'm quite a short person, so I hate being standing, and I hate going to the front. But at a Florence and the Machine gig, it's so more peaceful and respectful. You don't get pushed or shoved. I stood right at the front, and no worries. In fact, I was allowed to the front by people standing in front of me. It's just the atmosphere is so relaxed, and I would definitely go again.
That's your message. Be nice to short people.
Yeah.
Finishing off this lineup, on the Saturday, also Two Door Cinema Club and Miles Kane. And then on the Sunday, Muse takes centre stage, the final day, the final act. Joining them that day, Lewis Capaldi, New Order, Underworld, Parkway Drive, and my personal favourites, Black Honey. Now, as well as that, we have got another festival which I will just quickly allude to, because we like UK festivals and we like people coming in. And as the podcasts go on, I'll allude to other UK festivals. We'll come on to Latitude in a couple of weeks and things like that as well. But I've got to give a big shout, obviously, to the biggest metal festival in the UK, which is Download. Their lineup came out recently. Def Leppard, Slipknot with their new album, All Out Live, the new track by Slipknot. I absolutely love it. It's going back to the sort of heavy, big anthem tracks like, Duality. So it's good to come back to that. Tool are playing, Smashing Pumpkins, Trivium, Lamb of God, Slash, Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. That's going to be their third album as a band, which will be playing there. And then on the spare stages, not the spare stages, the sort of support stages, big bands like Rob Zombie, Hailstorm, Slayer. It's their final ever UK show. Skindred, brilliant band from Wales, Dream Theatre. And then also, on one of the support stages further down, if you like something a bit more electronical, Enter Shikari, because no one dislikes Enter Shikari. So that's Download Festival in Derbyshire, on Donington Park Race Circuit, between the 14th of June, 16th of June, and obviously we'll talk about it more when the time comes to that festival. Now, there's something coming up on the 24th of February. Can you guess what that may be?
I cannot.
It's the Oscars.
Oh, of course.
So yeah, it's the Oscars coming up, and obviously we've had the BAFTAs. That's the UK done. We're now going over to the US scene, and I have got the nominees. I've got lots of nominees here. What nominees are you interested in, Jess?
I've said that before for the BAFTAs. The one I'm most hoping for, crossing my fingers against all odds, that Christian Bale will get Best Actor.
I was going to say, Christian Bale, surely must be up there for Best Actor. I believe they're still waiting to release some of the top lists. I mean, you've got film editing. They're doing score here as well, which obviously I know you like because score and soundtracks are different as well. The Oscars, even bigger than the BAFTAs, surely.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the biggest film awards ceremony of the year, though it does seem to be in a little bit of a shambles at the moment, obviously with the Kevin Hart controversy, and they currently don't have a host. But I kind of like the idea they're going with, and I really hope it works, how they're going to have multiple hosts, including, I don't think it's the full cast, but I think it's the majority of the cast of the Marvel films, which I think would be very interesting, considering how this is such a big year for Marvel with the ending of the Avengers. And I think this is a new stage for Marvel, because obviously they've gone into partnership with Fox now, and it's gonna be a new generation of Marvel films coming. So I'm glad that they're being appreciated at the Oscars more.
And let's be honest, there'll be better hosts than Joanna Lumley was at the BAFTAs. No offence, Joanna, but yeah.
I do love Joanna Lumley, but whoever wrote that script should not be writing it
yeah,
again.
she got done over a bit by that script. Now, The Walking Dead. We've had some news come out about that, haven't we?
Yes, actually. The actress of Michonne is due to leave at the end of season 10, which is shocking because of the recent revelation that, he's gone now, but Andrew Lincoln's gone now. Obviously the actor of Carl Grimes has already left. It makes me wonder when they're just going to pin the end of this show, because they're running out of characters fast.
was going to say, we're coming through season 9 in the United States now. We're halfway through season 9, if not coming towards the end of season 9. There's a new episode coming out on the 17th of Feb, new episode coming out on the 24th of Feb over in the United States. I'm not sure when that comes to the UK or if it comes instantaneously. That's why you do your research. Season 10, do you think they can do it?
I stopped watching after season 6. I feel like the problem with Walking Dead, that shows such as Game of Thrones and other shows, the problem with Walking Dead is that, well, against Game of Thrones, is that there is no end game. Game of Thrones has an end date. It's wrapping up soon. It's been a wonderful story arc, and we know once it's done, hopefully that's done. Apart from the spin-off series, but I'm just going to wait to see when they're actually properly announced. But the problem with Walking Dead is that there's no end game. It feels like a soap, to be honest, because you just don't know when to stop watching. You don't know how it's going to resolve, whether it ever will resolve. It feels like at this point they're just throwing out more storylines. And obviously this is now, the reason I stopped watching was because it felt like they were pumping out the same storyline over and over again. Like, you've got a group of survivors. They find a place to stay. That place to stay is ruined. Carol will save the day with a machine gun or something. And finally they'll move on, find another place to stay, and the whole thing will repeat itself. And I just kind of got sick of that repetition. And it's such a shame because it started off as a brilliant TV show. I love the actors. The storylines were interesting. The character development was absolutely brilliant. It's had 10 seasons, so I'm sure the character development is still going to this day. But it feels like that's all there is anymore. It's just character development, like season after season. And now it's losing characters, so soon it's a wonder where they're going to take this.
Sticking in America, talk to me about Aladdin.
Yes, it was it yesterday, I think, they released a new teaser, and what everybody's been waiting for was the reveal of Will Smith's genie. I gotta say, I'm a bit disappointed.
Why so? Why so with Will Smith's genie?
I feel like it was a losing game to begin with. After how brilliant, how loved Robin Williams was as the genie, I don't think they were ever going to win with this. They could have picked the best actor in the world. I don't think there is a best actor in the world, but if there was, they could have picked him and he still would not have matched Robin Williams. I think it's just an unbeatable game, especially they've got Guy Ritchie directing it, and although he's done some great things in the past, like the Sherlock Holmes films, he's actually done some stinkers recently. And my problem is that Disney maybe release too many films a year. At the moment, they're going on a reboot run. They're just rebooting everything. And although I don't have much of a problem with that, because some of the reboots have been brilliant, I feel like releasing more than one a year is a bit overdoing it. And it's also, they obviously have to split their resources to do this. I think the best way to do it would be to release one reboot a year, put everything into it, and make the best reboots ever. Because at the moment, it's looking like Lion King is going to be the reboots that everyone's looking forward to, whereas Aladdin, I think, is a hit and miss. It's a bit like how controversial opinion, but Beauty and the Beast to me was the hit and miss. Whereas Jungle Book was really good and made some nice changes from the cartoon, but at the same time was great for the nostalgia.
I'm going to throw in a controversial question here. Robin Williams obviously did voice the genie before. Ethically, do you think Disney would be well off to sort of, recycle his lines with a live-action actor for the genie?
I don't think a live action, but I think maybe they could have recycled his voice clips and on top of a CGI character. But of course, that does have its ethical complications. I think they should have just left Aladdin alone. There's a lot more other films that people were looking forward to a reboot, such as Mulan. And personally, for me, I'm looking forward to Pinocchio because it's got Guillermo del Toro spearheading it. And he's brilliant at practical effects and stuff. So personally, I was really looking forward to that, but that's been pushed back a few years.
So Jess thinks maybe they should terminate the Will Smith Aladdin. Speaking of terminate...
Yes, they've just announced the name of the recent Terminator film. I don't even know which number Terminator it is. They've just been
no one knows.
shooting them out like non-stop. I think it might be either 5 or... I think it's 6. It's going to be called Terminator Dark Fate, and this is actually being spearheaded by James Cameron, the creator of the franchise. It's going to completely ignore all the sequels that a lot of the fans don't like, so anything after Terminator 2, though it is being directed by Deadpool's Tim Miller. It's doing everything what the fans have been asking for years. It's got Linda Hamilton returning, of course Arnold Schwarzenegger's returning, and it's got 2 more female heroines that are coming. Heroines.
They all work.
2 more female humans.
That works too.
2 more female actors that are returning up. Of course, James Cameron's kind of famous for his brilliant female leads, such as Ellen Ripley and, of course, Sarah Connor. I'm personally very looking forward to it. I'm wondering what he's going to do with it and when it will come out, because currently James Cameron is working on Avatar 1, 2, 3, 4 and 25. Yeah, speaking of Avatar, they've just announced that they've started filming Avatar 2, 3 and 4.
How difficult must it be? Because obviously Avatar 1 was absolutely huge, even if it was about 4 years long. So how difficult must it be, do you reckon, to go in with a plan for all 3 of these films, keep it under the radar, and then systematically do its releases up against other big films?
James Cameron's been very secretive about this. Avatar 2 was actually supposed to be released in 2014. I think the problem is, James Cameron, I think he was planning on doing Avatar in the 90s, and because of the technical limitations, he had to leave it a while. And I don't know whether you've seen the documentary Stand By Me. It's directed, but I think it was directed by Keanu Reeves, and basically he's interviewing multiple directors, probably the biggest names in cinema, about their opinion on moving from film reels to digital. And it's an interesting documentary. If you're a fan of films, then I highly recommend you watch it. And in this, James Cameron tells us that he actually invented the 3D camera that people are commonly using today for Avatar, the first Avatar film. And that just goes to show what kind of... He's not just a director, he's an engineer. So I'm actually highly looking forward to the Avatar sequels, because the engineer he is, he's had... when was it released? 2009? He's had 10 years to direct this. I'm wondering what he's going to come out with. He changed 3D cinema for, it was for the good for a while, but I feel like it's going out of fashion now. But the way he directed it, he invented a new camera for it. Avatar 2, 3 and 4 are being filmed back to back as far as I'm aware. They'll be released quite close together. And I think Avatar 2 is supposed to be standalone-ish.
Could this be? Could Avatar 2 be one of the biggest box office films of all time? Could it have a similar impact compared to the first Avatar? Or do you think it's been too long?
James Cameron has had a long streak of huge blockbuster films. Terminator 2 was one of the biggest films released when at the time. Then it was trumped by Titanic, another one of probably... Personally, I feel like Titanic was the most successful film ever, because not only was it best-selling at the time, it's still best-selling now, despite the fact that back in the 90s people weren't going to the cinema that often, tickets were cheaper, and it ran for a whole year at a time when barely anybody was going to the cinema. So I feel like, he's got a huge streak of successful films, and obviously when Avatar came out, that was absolutely huge for its time. Not only with the introduction of the latest 3D technology, but also it's 2D. It's just like the CGI was spectacular for 2009. I think it still stands up now. Yeah, it was groundbreaking. I honestly, despite multiple theories, I think Avatar 2 will be successful because it's James Cameron.
And obviously, just quickly now, as we come towards the end of the first ever Entertainment Room, you've got some stuff for us, I believe, on Game of Thrones and also on World War Z.
Yeah, actually, I've got multiple film announcements. I'm just gonna go through them very quickly. Howard the Duck has been revived. This was Marvel's first ever film. It was directed by George Lucas shortly after his Star Wars career. In fact, it almost ruined his career because it was a bad film. But despite this, they're actually reviving Howard the Duck. He's actually been featured recently. I don't know whether you spotted this, but he had a cameo in Guardians.
I'm trying to think now. I don't know if I saw it.
Yeah, I believe he was in the end credits of the first Guardians film, and
yes.
he also had a brief appearance in Guardians 2. That was kind of like a comedy effect, but now it's for real. He's getting a TV series on Hulu, I believe, and it's being written by Kevin Smith, who's quite a famous comedy director. And it's just it's going to be interesting to see where they take that. I think it might go in a Ted direction or a Detective Pikachu, where you've got kind of like a grumpy cartoon character. But let's see for that. Also in recent news, you've got like you said, Game of Thrones has released its first set of pictures for season 8. It doesn't tell us much about the season 8 storyline. It's mainly just the pictures of the characters that are reappearing as expected. You've got a picture of Sansa, I believe, Arya, Jon and Daenerys, and others. On top of that, we have the first teaser for a new film being released called Token. It's going to follow the life of the Lord of the Rings writer, and basically his life experiences and how they inspired the huge cult classic fantasy book series. Nicholas Hoult is playing Tolkien himself, and you've got it looks quite good. On top of that, you've got the recent Pet Sematary trailer, adapted from the book by Stephen King. A lot of people are looking forward to this. And of course, my final bit of news today is the World War Z sequel has been cancelled.
And is that a disappointment for you, or do you think actually that's a good thing that it's been cancelled?
I feel like it's going to be a disappointment for a lot of World War Z fans, but it's quite good for me because I'm a fan of David Fincher and I absolutely love his psychological thrillers. I felt like such an amazing directing talent was wasted on a zombie sequel.
Fair play. So that will do that for today. Just 2 more bits of news before we end off. Obviously fought with Professor Green, who has hurt himself quite badly after having a seizure from which he fell and has sustained fractures in his neck. He hasn't completely broke his neck. Apparently his flatmate has rumoured that he was very close to actually being a much worse accident. So obviously fought with Professor Green. He's cancelled his tour, hopefully going ahead towards the winter time this year instead.
Yeah, he said he will be back for a second tour in winter, and I think I do feel sorry for him. That sounds pretty rough.
It's a very rough injury, and actually for a man who often does portray quite a good message to actually insecure people and young people as well. And finally, I forgot something. I forgot to announce one of the people playing at Rock Berkshire. Kylie Minogue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I saw that, but she's not, according to Rock Berkshire, she's not Kylie Minogue anymore. She's Kylie.
I don't think many people have a problem with that. Pop princess of Australia's coming back, so.
I think I should do that sort of thing as well. I think I shouldn't be Jacob Ottaway. I should be Jacob.
Yeah.
I think that works. And so, that will do for today's Entertainment Room. Thank you very much to Jess Clayton-Berry, the pioneer and the wonderful person on this podcast. I'm Jacob Ottaway, that's Jess Clayton-Berry, and we hope you enjoyed our first ever Entertainment Room podcast.
Hopefully you'll hear from us next week with more film news, and this was our first ever podcast, so hopefully we'll have a bit more of a structure going maybe.
And obviously the other thing as well, if you do have any things we want to talk about on the podcast, if you have anything to feedback, any stories we might be interested in, however you access this podcast, probably through social media of some description, do leave a comment and we'll happily act upon that. Thank you very much.